So Adrian, thanks for joining us today. Maybe I can start with a question on housing affordability. We hear that expression a lot in the media. Could you just give us your view of what that is?
Yeah, I mean, I guess at its base level, housing affordability is a relative term. If you're earning a lot of money, you can afford all sorts of properties. The problem for us is that people conflate the term housing affordability with affordable housing, and the distinction we make is that they are two very different things. Our specific concern is about affordable housing, and I don't just mean social housing or what people might refer to as public housing, but a general level of affordable housing, both that's provided by government or the community sector, but also in the market itself. There's virtually no affordable rental for the bottom 40% of household incomes in Australia in any of our capital cities now. We produce a rental affordability index which focuses specifically on Australia's rental market, and that says that there's just nothing available for people on low incomes. So our real concern is trying to build up Australia's supply of affordable housing, and they're different things. So when we talk about affordable housing, we're really referring to people in the bottom 40% of incomes, and if they can achieve paying less than 30% of their gross income on housing.
That means if we're seeing pressures as we are in people being able to afford to buy homes, can you just talk to the linkage between, say, the pressures on being able to purchase a home and how that's linked to obviously the pressures in the rental market, and therefore that bottom 40%, what's the impact having on those people?
Lots of people have trouble purchasing, and our home ownership rates are declining. They're starting to decline quite significantly, and the most significant change in that probably is people who own outright compared to people who own with a mortgage. That balance has now shifted and gone beyond a tipping point. We always used to have more people who owned outright than who owned with a mortgage. It's now the other way around. So home ownership is dropping and becoming more fluid as well. That then cascades down into the rental market, because the rental market is chock full of people who are frustrated would-be homeowners. And they tend to try and rent down if they possibly can, so that they can save that ever-increasing deposit gap. And the effect of that means that they displace lower income households from low-cost housing. And ultimately that results in an increase in homelessness.
You talked a bit about the focus on supply and also this issue around, frustrated people in the marketplace would otherwise be buying. Where do we start? If you target moving more people into home ownership, does that help the rental market? Is it enough, or are there other places that we have to focus in order to get that settings right?
I mean, I think we have to focus on a whole range of things. I don't think there is a silver bullet. I guess our primary target in terms of the overall market is really tax reform, because we think that the current tax settings provide too many distortions in the market, and therefore the market doesn't really operate as a market should.
Obviously ANZ's a key sort of player in the housing market more generally. I mean, if there was a role for ANZ, what would you see that being?
I think shared equity is something that more financial institutions could look at. But I also think being part of the conversation about housing affordability is really important. I think being open and engaging in a conversation nationally about housing affordability is a really useful thing for banks to do.